has been the sponsor of the Forum for Stable Currencies ever since I started that with Lord Soodley. And so monetary reform, or that and how money is at the root of all evils, is what he knows more about than most MPs, I would say. And it's been this sort of his weekly or monthly letter to the Treasury or to the Bank of England. Well, you see, this is part of our problem. I would given out a lot of things because they don't listen and it doesn't seem worth it. Vicky, there's still a chair in the middle there. Please don't sit in the second row. Vicky Haig is this prime example of surviving, not only having no access to her child, but also having been in prison falsely and
3 years for breaching non-molestation.
So the courts, I mean, John Hemming made it clear to us that and how there are procedures in place, and we just don't know how to use them. Chris Haverdale has studied the illegality of wars. I came to London with a vision of a peace network of people and computers protecting us, and I learned only now that wars have been made illegal since 1929. I mean, how crazy do we need to be? How many more children need to be snatched? How many more soldiers need to be killed? And how many more court judges need to be exposed? And what do we do at this point? How can we be better in what we are doing better? You understand us, don't you?
There are some children killed actually. There are some children who's been killed at the end of the social services, which is his only intent. One of them is in Hackney Council. I can't remember the name of the little baby. I think she's Nigerian origin, and they didn't, I don't know. Do you know anything about this case? Anything?
Well, I think we can't go into cases with Austin anymore either. I think we need to look to him as the best possible platform for balancing individual cases. We've got the answer this morning very clearly. We have to do good casework. I have observed in all of the cases, no matter what white-collar crime, people are not able to write a succinct summary of their story. It is the first start. You cannot send a 30-page document, not even to your own MP. That is rule number one, that's for sure. But Belinda and I both try to kind of advance the whole scene on behalf of all of the victims. And that in that process we came up in a discussion with the 7 syndromes, the deadly syndromes. The first one being secret societies, actually, and that's what Belinda knows a lot about as well. I don't know whether you want to address it, ask Austin for help on secret societies. But then Tony Farrell is this incredible whistleblower of 7/7. I mean, he is isolated, not only the enemy from within, but also knows more about the police and how it doesn't do what it should be doing than anybody wants to know. Maybe you want to say something about that aspect of the deadly syndromes, Tony?
What words do I have?
Well, why not now?
Did you know anything about my situation?
No.
Well, I was a principal intelligence analyst with the 17-year service that was asked to do a threat assessment, and it incorporated threat from terrorism. And I wasn't prepared to lie and say that the threat comes from Islamic terrorism on the basis of being persuaded through my own analysis that events like 9/11 and 7/7 were orchestrated from within, and that nobody in Parliament has got the courage to speak out against the obvious. The normal judicial process has not been followed for 7/7. Little wonder, because of how it's been perpetrated. And I spoke truth to power and was dismissed for an incompatible belief, but they went to great lengths to say that I had an exemplary record and that could even be truthful. You said you've used just incompatible word at the moment, but they also said, and this is senior ranking police officers, you and I, Tony, will never get the politicians to tell the truth on something in 7/7. So they know it, and I know the lines. Even my own police officers who were with me, I wasn't a police officer, I was a senior police officer, were there on the terror on the day, something which has never been revealed, which would expose the current official narrative as what's allowed. So I'm appalled that you can allow such evil And those that fail to uphold it, to my mind, make themselves complicit in it. And I for the life of me, when we allow an event like 7/7 and allow the nation to be deluded and something is wrong with the country, and unless I see politicians looking at that obvious monstrosity, I worry about the extent of corruption that we witness and how it's going to be tackled. Because I've witnessed a complete stonewalling within the police service, and since coming out, being thrown out of the police service and keeping truth to fire, I have become a bit of a magnet for various corruption cases. And I'm sick of it because I've learned far more since being out in the last 18 months than I ever did in 17 years at the police service.
So, what position were you?
I was the principal intelligence analyst of perhaps the most notorious police force in the country at the moment, that's South Yorkshire Police. Bearing in mind that South Yorkshire Police for 23 years, successive senior chief constables have covered up the Hillsborough disaster. And we've also had South Yorkshire Police being exposed for covering up child abuse in Rotherham. We've also this morning heard a very good testimony of what's happened to Vicky Hay at Doncaster, where we've had South Yorkshire Police involvement, where my boss, the Director of Intelligence, was Head of Public Protection, and all that happened to Vicky Hay happened under his watch, and it was his role to prevent that kind of thing from happening. So it sounds really what I see within the police.
Sorry, I haven't actually made that connection. It's the same guy.
Well, the Director of Intelligence, Detective Superintendent, was head of, so he had a number of portfolios, Head of Public Protection would entail public issues.
So it would entail family fraud protection.
I actually sent them a dossier of all the, step by step. You helped as well, Sibby, edit back the pre-file document, the summary of my case and all the documents where the police could have done something about it. And when I went to pick it up, they actually told me that their lawyers had looked at it and I could be in contempt of court and I could go to prison. I mean, they've tried to put me in prison so many times that it's like, they finally got me in the end, but they can't keep me in there forever, see me. So actually, because of the change in 2009 in the Children's Act, you can actually approach the police and tell them things.
Don't know.
Well, they don't. They try and then turn it around and say you're in contempt of court. So it's really difficult to try and get mistakes or injustices unravelled and overturned. It really is.
And what is worse now is the gap between what's happening online and what's happening out there, because people have lost confidence in the political system, whereas they gain confidence from being online. So who can do what is really...
I mean, from my point of view, as
Please project, because we don't have the
sorry,
right here.
yeah, these are on.
No, they won't.
The other side, not the other side of the coin, is actually got one shade between the two sides of the coin, is that in a way the blogosphere, certain parts of it, has become a kind of safe haven for people who just want to mouth off with zero evidence. And it's very difficult to tell the difference between people who are serious about what they're doing and want to present what John Henning this morning called good casework.
Yeah.
And people who just want to say, did you know that, Margaret Thatcher's a paedophile or something? The balmy stuff, if you like, the lunatic fringe, as we used to call it, technical term. I mean, the more that goes on, the more it makes it difficult for people blogging online to be taken seriously. And to be honest with you, the more you get cases like McAlpine incident, for instance, where, from my personal viewpoint, there is a man who comes into a situation and blatantly manipulates that situation through his own political ends, and the media brings it pretty much his way, with him eating out their hand. And the blogosphere, in many ways, only has itself to blame, because it unquestionably wrongly identified it. But those who have done their research in Wrexham and Chester, you're perfectly right, Jim McAlpine. his second cousin, who was a notorious paedophile for years. And then they blew it. And the Dean blew it through the most ridiculously pathetic research. They didn't check a single fact at the beginning. But then, and that's unfortunate, because within that situation, you then get the whole business of what picture Steve Mesham was shown, why the police showed him that picture, and which name they attached to that picture, and therefore what he did actually not identify. But McCallum's got the high ground, which is very clever. Media regulation takes one to know. He's a humbug, complete humbug. The guy wrote a book in Australia explaining how to do exactly what he's just done. That's really easy out of his head. Unfortunately, it's not that, because it's a very easy thing, and there's lots of evidence to say, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of blogs out there who just shout their heads up about this stuff, and they're palpably talking rubbish. You know, that's the thing. So it's not just the fact that the NSM are actually complicit in a lot of the gender discrimination, it's also the fact that the blogosphere don't do themselves any favours. I don't know anything else, but I would do that.
Can I say though that if you have a case where all the state authorities are implicated, the judiciary, the local authority and CAFCAS, the police are yet another state authority, and they are very ready to protect their own.
Yes.
And even when you've got all the evidence to support what you're saying, they can also choose to ignore you. And the problem is, when you then take the matter to the IPCC, the eye shouldn't really be there because they're not really very independent.
No,
they tend to protect the police.
Basically, police like years ago was stopped for years and years, but who was at the top of floods of Barcad, bloke was doing it.
Yeah.
It was all just a big cover-up.
But then you see, that is when a complicit media is a serious problem. Because that is the only way, no offense, but that is the way for most politicians, the only way they're frightened, is when they suddenly get reminded that there's 58 million of us and only 420 of them. And all those constituents who, you know, Rotherham was getting very close to that for a couple of days, and then suddenly it all changed to being the agenda about UKIP and it might win this seat. UKIP never had a chance of winning that seat.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. Is that what I say? It's distraction, deception, distortion. That's what happens all the time. And if you can't find a leader or a legislator with enough courage to take on that kind of thing, I'm afraid you are, as we say, technically stuffed.
And another recent development is the concern about the Police and Crime Commissioner appointments. And if anyone saw the 10 o'clock news ITV one yesterday, they were talking about the cronyism of the people who have just been appointed in November, appointing all their friends and allies into key posts, many of them from the previous police authorities.
Yeah, last time I saw Oliver Lettman about 18 months ago. He's a very nice man, but this is a bit of a brainchild of Oliver's actually. He's Oliver's one to do this. And I just said to him, Ollie, why is it that every time, you know, there's a problem in the country, you guys think there are just more politicians? You know, and you know, is the way to stop cronyism within the police service to have one guy elected above them who is immediately going to be separated from them because he's a potential monitor of what they do. It's like putting a commissar on a USSR submarine. Are they going to be friendly with him? I don't think so. Are they going to tell him what's going on? And will there be cronyism in the choice? Still not. In Humberside, the guy who had been a notorious paedophile, jailed twice, got on the Labour shortlist commission. What's that all about?
Labour 25 is a website which I think has now 39 convicted paedophiles on it.
It is pretty convincing reading. Some of it's nonsense, but most of it isn't. It's a good sign.
The problem is also that you get a number of so-called independents standing, many of them who have affiliations with the police force. They're meant to be policing. They were either previously on the police authority or worked as police officers on that authority, you know, for that force.
But the bigger issue is depoliticising the police again to where they used to be. Because what you get all the time now is careerism. You know, they'll follow up an alleged case of homophobia, but not a massive paedophile ring in Rotherham involving everybody from the local Labour Party to Pakistani taxi drivers, because that's a hot potato on about 7 different dimensions. Most people want an easy life, even top couples. That's been my experience, though. Yeah.
This gentleman was literally picked up off the street because he
might
was...
be a bit disposition again.
because his children. Yeah, because his case, in quotes, just adds to the many stories of children being taken. And I think that's the only, sex, money, or both is the...
It is both.
It is
There's
both.
money from everybody. Psychiatrists, traffickers,
carers. Social
It's
services.
social services.
It's all public money though as well. You know, they're scamming the people's money.
Which is why ultimately, we've got...
That's this gentleman's area.
Yes, which is why ultimately my only way forward, that if I was in any powerful position, I would say they can't go on controlling anymore. They must make some kind of amnesty and jubilee happen and act as compensator of last resort and pay out everybody and everybody and everybody. Because it's this controlling and artificially tight money and austerity cuts just makes a complete farce out of everything.
Sabine, I don't know this gentleman's case on over there,
But Austin is not a very good person for a child case. Yeah?
I'm just wondering if...
Why? Because you don't know all of the patterns yet.
Thing
John has.
From that gentleman over there, Slovakia got involved. If there's a, and I know that Christopher Booker has a top barrister in India. I'm guessing.
Pakistan.
Yeah, and they are interested now. Different nations, different governments throughout the world are getting more interested in things. And I just think, that we need to take this more international, and cry for help, because they're helping Slovakians, but we're not getting help from our own government.
That's very, very accurate and true. And when I googled for the center that helped the Slovakians, I stumbled into a website called PPL, short for Pound Pub Legacy, which is American-based, set up by adoptees, because that's what happens after people have been put into care. They get adopted. And they are as international as you can make it. They link to a center in The Hague, but The Hague, that site doesn't help in any way directly, but not all countries are affiliated, and I just felt we have to set up an organization for the UK. There's certainly nothing in the UK that helps on the international legal protection, but thanks to you, Vicky, Baroness Corsten is on board, and she was with us.
It was nice, so nice. I went to photocopy this for her as my speech this morning so that she could take it away, and her photocopy broke down and I came back and she'd gone, so...
The outgoing Archbishop of Canterbury is for laws today.
I know she's meeting him, yeah.
But the beauty is, first she wrote a report about women in prison. Secondly, she was before the Justice Committee, and when she was asked would she have liked to have added something to the case, she said foreign nationals, and that's exactly right, because Vicky's experience is the experience I've had in Holloway, that people, that foreign mothers are targeted.
Not in any way we should sort of jump the gun.
As long as you project your voice, please.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm such a quiet, retiring person by nature. Anyway. What I was saying to you on the way from the other venue, in terms of the biggest single. Well, we can all have our opinions about whether something is important or unimportant. But if you take macro versus micro, the big macro issue facing this country at the moment is a fiscal.
It's a fiscal one, do you listen?
Yeah, followed by an economic one, and I'm sort of assuming that's why you've got Austin here. So,
well, you can.
Because it's one thing that probably will push a lot of the news that we're all interested in off the front page. And also, it does have more direct connections than that. A lot of things, as John Hemming was pointing out this morning, a lot of things happen for purely budgetary reasons. Like we didn't get any water in the room, it's the austerity.
But Austin will tell you that the austerity cuts are not necessary, because money doesn't have to be created by banks and only by the city and only at interest, only as credit. You see, that's the real problem. Are you doing anything about these austerity cuts at all, or have you done something?
Well, consider it is that they aren't necessary, but the government is insisting on making them. Its agenda is really to roll back the state rather than revive the economy. There are a fact of life, which has got to do with the weather. You've got to to work with the austerity cuts, see how we can make them
Why
make
do
the best of it, but we're not going to be able to change because we're in opposition.
you feel the cuts are not necessary?
You have to speak up so that also can hear you.
Why do you feel the cuts are not necessary?
Well, they aren't necessary because debt isn't the problem, it's lack of demand at the moment. And that demands more spending power in the community. So if you start cutting benefits, you're reducing the spending power of a large section of society. That means that you're involved on a downward deflationary path. It's only by some kind of Keynesian stimulus measures, either building houses or pumping out money to those who spend it, that you're going to be able to get any growth. And growth is the only way of paying off the debt. So we're in a vicious circle. They claim the debt is a reason for the cuts. The cuts then make the debt burden heavier and weaken the ability of the economy to pay off the debts. So it's just simple bad economics.
There's also a comment.
But we can't do anything with it because we're in opposition.
No.
And the government has a majority.
Yeah, I think there's also another issue surrounding it too, which is that we probably have now, I think it's about 18.5 billion the Chancellor has saved in inverted commas. He hasn't actually saved it, he's cut it, everything's moving forward, so we're not even at that level yet. During that period of time, quantitative easing conducted by the Bank of England was stuffed in £385 billion. So it is a bit like, it's a bit like trying to change the sort of football game by removing one linesman's lace or something. It's complete and utter nonsense. You can't do one to the other. And the big issue as well as is that what happens with QE in the end is that it helps banks build their balance sheets, which is at least 60% of the reason for doing it. And I guess also, in the long term, what it does is it enables companies to stockpile money and then give it out to, as dividends to shareholders, and that keeps the stock market up. And the other thing that geopolitically everybody's terrified of is the stock market collapse, because that is the end game if that happens. And that's why they cap the gold price as well, because that's another exit route for people who are worried about stock market. This is a huge issue. It's not. There is, Austin, I think, is 110% correct. There's no reason at all for this type of austerity. Just one final point. I do also think the Chancellor is doing it because, believe it or not, it impresses the markets. It says he's making an effort. He's not a lazy fat Greek walking around with a stringless and not paying his tax. He's actually, I know he's doing the right thing. But it's his bollocks. There's no point in it.
As I remember, the biggest chunk of money goes to the judicial system in the expenditure. That money in the UK's economy, the biggest expenditure is the judicial system. Judicial system must be reviewed, and somehow, all these issues we are talking about, especially the family-related things, they have to be reviewed, and a new kind of system should be set up. And all that money is going to be enough for everybody. There is not any judges and barristers, they charge a huge amount of money about it.
I think the reason why, and I would like to hear what Austin Mitchell's got to say about this, when I can shut up about it, is the issue of, the great thing about austerity is they can use it to push through lots of other political agendas. The NHS being an example. You can starve the hospital structures of money for a couple of years, and then when they turn insolvent, do what Jeremy Hunt's doing now, is turn and say, oh, we've got to have some privatisation here because they're bust. And also we're on austerity, so it's terrible. And what happens is that, lots of health companies, insurers come in and take it over. It's just it's a Trojan horse. It's a very effective policy, and it's incredibly dangerous, but it's very effective.
I'm going to give you an example. The people, when they spend the money, all the government, they are responsible to the government or councils, they don't spend that money responsibly. I'll give you an example. Sometimes, you see 20, 25, sometimes 30 people, they just stop the buses. The buses, they check the tickets. The people who do whether do they have the tickets or not. And probably they catch one or two in a complete whole day. And they spend all those 30 people at complete wages of one-day wages, you know, that money is gone, isn't it? I mean, it's a huge amount of money, and they do it in most of the areas of the London. They don't spend the money wisely. They don't account the money where they are spending, and there's a very selfish economy has been created, and people, they don't see the needs of the other people, other communities. So all these issues, you know, the people related to, you know, the culture and the women culture we are all sharing, and you know.
But given that you're in opposition now, and as you say, you know, main Liberals prior to the coalition, so you can't affect anything. Can you give us any advice on how we can influence it in an effective way, you know, ex capital to that spot?
Well, let's widen it from the economic situation.
Yeah.
Because I think what you said is absolutely right there. The government has shown that it can and will bring money in the emergency. The problem is that they printed it by buying back debt from public debt from the banks, and the resulting money has been stashed away by the banks to improve their balance sheets, and not put into circulation, or not provided for mortgages or lending for business or whatever. So the intention of stimulating the economy by printing money has not worked out. There are other ways of doing it, but that's a long argument. I mean, I think the problem with opposing the government's policy is that there's a divergence of this range of views and no unanimity. The opposition has to oppose and must oppose, but it's got to be able to base its policies on sound economics and then propagate those after a time. It will cause a reaction. The people will say we can't stand this pain any longer and we're not prepared to tolerate these cuts.
Sure.
And this austerity any longer. We want an alternative, and they'll turn to the opposition. That's the stage at which we need an informed, effective opposition with policies to reverse the situation. So, I mean, that's a painful learning process. I mean, I think it's Rahm Emanuel said, depression is the opportunity. It isn't actually. Depression frightens people.
Yeah.
But a long period of punishing government policies, making things worse, actually does prepare people for change, which is very difficult in democracy. And change comes by the leverage of the electoral system. So that's, in a sense, a problem which will take time and pain to solve. What we're concerned with today, I've got to talk later, so I have to go at 3 o'clock.
Okay, 9 minutes.
I've got an adjournment debate on a matter of local policy. But, I mean, the people I've spoken to today and in previous meetings have all got individual problems which are caused either by the inadequacies of the courts, the perversities of the judges, or by the nature of close corporations like police, which become a kind of Freemasonry, protecting each other and presenting a face of lies, if necessary, to the public or to anybody with a grievance about it. The only way we can break through that is by some external channel of appeal, and that's very inadequate. Police complaints about it has been largely impotent. It's now been strengthened. I hope for better action from it, but it's still an organisation within the purview of the Freemasonry, which hasn't really got the power to deal with it. The judges, again, the self-protective instincts of the law. People have talked to me about cases of corrupt solicitors who put their case badly or not dealt with their case adequately at all, or are in with the other side in an argument. And there I've had similar cases. Immigrants, the law tends to take a self-protective role. It protects its own. And solicitors, therefore, are very difficult to deal with because the Law Society will ultimately expel them, but in the meantime, the system protects them. It's very difficult to get one solicitor to take up a case against another solicitor to get representation in those cases. That can only be dealt with by creating what we have, legal services ombudsman, but again, that's a question of the power and the independence of such a body. The resort in all cases has to be to Parliament, which is very difficult for you to make. I mean, you raised the great issue of organophosphates. Again, this is a question really of a scientific analysis and gathering the facts and bringing those facts to bear to the attention of MPs and the attention of the media. You raised the question of the legality of war, which is an even bigger question, where undoubtedly, I think in the case of the Iraq War, I'm not qualified to speak about other wars, it was illegal, and the government took steps to coerce the legal authorities into providing a judgment that it may be illegal, it may not be illegal.
On one occasion, literally. On one occasion, literally.
On one occasion,
yeah.
it was certainly the equivocal judgment. And, they were bullied into it, basically, but the only thing that would be made illegal would be a verdict by the United Nations, which they were capable of getting, and they didn't in fact get. So it was therefore an illegal war. Now, in all these cases, individual cases, maltreatment by the police, inadequacies of the court, the only redress is to MPs, and there it's a question of attracting them, holding their attention, because we are a butterfly brain, hopping from subject to subject. And frankly, I can understand that. I mean, the kind of things that come up are myriad all over the place.
But what could or should MPs be doing for their constituents in these
So you can raise
situations?
Parliament is useful mainly as a means of police. You can raise it in debates, in German debates, in questions, but you usually get the brush off from the departments and from ministers. The German debates, you'll normally get a strong statement of the case, and then the minister will come along with a bland reply saying, very difficult, the parliament evidence is such a... I mean...
no matter which parties...
I'm now dealing with an issue where officials' compensation, the official has been robbed by the deduction of money which was provided to them under an earlier redundancy scheme. The unfortunate fact is that the department has hired private contractors to do the job, has deducted some of this money twice. In other words, they've deducted money that's already been deducted under an earlier scheme. Now, the new minister is Jo Swinson. I can't get her to agree that this is the case. She just gives me replies which are obviously dictated by the civil service themselves, which don't kill the issue or deal with the case. So now my only choice is to raise it in Parliament, or, what I'm doing first, take it to the Ombudsman. I've taken two similar cases of bad advice and bad policy to the Ombudsman and won them both.
Is that the parliamentary
ombudsman?
Is that the parliamentary ombudsman?
The patients is getting exhausted.
Is-
But raise it with the MP. The MP has the option to raise it in debate, which is a means of public pressure on the department, or in questions, but they've got to be persistent. And frankly, the number of issues coming under our gaze and concern is so varied and wide that it's difficult to be an expert on all of them and to know the facts on all of them. And that, I think, is the... but you must still take them up with the MP and get them to refuse, in which case you try and pass it on. In a minute, and you pass it on to another MP who will deal with it on the grounds that their own MP, to whom you've got to have first recourse, has refused to do so, to get some interest and involvement. Take it up with some of the select committees. I get various cases of overspending or inadequate contracts or fiddles coming to me as a member of the Public Accounts Committee. All I can do is then pass them on to the Auditor General General and get him to apply. He's part of the system, part of the old boy system. Some cases I get successfully dealt with, others I just get fobbed off. But the MP is the main channel through which you've got to act, but bear in mind that his or her powers are limited and primarily consist of publicity. So if the case is strong enough, get publicity first, and then MPs will jump. But this I'm saying, in conclusion, widening it to a conclusion, means that we've got to give more power to whistleblowers, more power and protection to whistleblowers.
That's what John Henry
Because that's the only way of finding out what's going on in closed organisations.
Do you think this is a constitutional issue in terms of the power of the executive?
It is. The executive is all powerful in this country.
I agree with you. I think it's very
It's more powerful than the Prime Minister is more powerful than the President. The authority is divided, and it's divided between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And it's divided between two houses. It's divided between the states and the federal government. So you've got a number of authorities that come to your resource. But here in this country, it is centralised on the executive. The executive is all powerful and it's very secretive. More openness is essential. But
when somebody's bringing a case to you, say in the area of business, commerce and banking, where they feel hard done by, for instance, do you have a view on the adverse effect of active lobbying by the other side?
no, not really. I mean, the other side would be prompt to act in any dispute anyway. What I need is some authority to advise me, help. I'm not a lawyer. No, sure. Legal cases, and I have no access to legal advice. Economic matters, I can judge for myself, and I know something about it. And I know the channels to go down. But what I'm saying is, talk to the MP first, make as much use of whistleblowers, and we certainly need to protect them in the way the Americans are protecting them. In fact, in our legislation, which gives the whistleblower a share of the fines exacted on wrongdoers. Thirdly, what Sweden is attempting to provide, the Mckenzie Friends, is an organisation where you can get a wider opinion, but you've got to be sure there, as you pointed out, the internet is full of rubbish and gems.
Yes.
It's a branter.
Yes.
It's a mixture. You put your hand in and you come up with sawdust, or you come up with a jewel. So you've got to be sure as an organisation that the cases are accurate and well researched and well documented. In other words, it's the documentation and the integrity, the strength of the case itself that will carry the day. But this is a marvellous organisation, a great idea, provided it doesn't pursue every hair across the country, provided it concentrates and documents and research. It's been a negative conclusion I'm coming to. We are comparatively weak in taking up cases in our ability to defend ourselves, and yet it's getting stronger all the time. Authorities are getting, like police complaints authority or the press, getting stronger gradually. We are getting more open government. You can now, on the freedom of information, get more information. And the select committee system is making MPs more effective, certainly on bigger issues. And government therefore has to be more responsive to them. But this is a Sisyphean job, actually. The roll the stone uphill, about 3 paces, and it rolls back 2. But the only way is to keep on pushing, keep on raising, and keep on informing, and keep on fighting. It's a gloomy forecast for me, but that's the realistic.
Can I ask you a challenging question before we go?
Bear in mind that as a 6-voice MP, I'm also a deaf one.
And you mentioned secrecy and the culture of secrecy in this place. And of course, a lot of it does come from people's secret interests, which they do not declare in membership literally of a secret society. Do you think it would be in the public interest for MPs to be required to declare their membership in the secret society.
Well, I've always thought that MPs and police and judges should be required to declare all those
Can you push for that?
secret involvements. But we haven't been able to win that one.
No.
I mean, Chris Muller was pushing for it, I was pushing for it for years. And we've made a little progress, but not much.
Because it's almost as though there's some sort of fifth column in our midst, which is on the
Well, if
side.
you're in a far protected field, there's a fifth column working against you.
Yeah.
It isn't always true,
No.
but it is.
Well, people on the ground feel
In the
it.
sense of a corporate Freemasonry, the interests of the body attacked.
Austin, do you still have time to listen to Roger?
Mr. Smith, I believe you were a journalist in a former life. You were a journalist in a former life?
Yeah. Not a very good one.
Sorry?
It was a beautiful one, but not an effective one.
Are you aware that the executive has slapped on orders keeping secret evidence which is of vital importance to the Leveson inquiry?
Well, they still have the ability to restrict access to evidence which they claim endangered national security. But those powers are more limited. The D-notice system is gone. You can't keep journalists out of the field. It's a question of whipping up their courage and getting their interest to get them into the field in the first place.
But I believe there are such things as PPIs, aren't there?
So,
I believe there are things called PPIs, public interest orders, which keep information absolutely out of public view when the executive need it to be done.
Again, at the risk of sounding like I'm arguing two ways at once, you have to remember, I had this happen to me about 10 months ago, a very informal but pretty heavy request from the police not to comment on the case. They actually had a very good reason for me not to comment on it, because the lawyer was about to use anything that appeared in the paper to get 3 extremely guilty defendants up, and I was very happy to shut up. Apart from the fact it's another context, isn't it? It's another copy, you know, and if you know you're not a bomb pop, you know, next time he'll talk to you again. Not everything they keep secret is kept secret just for the sake of doing something evil. The problem is a hell of a lot of it is. And it's very difficult to work out which is which.
Which is which, that is that. So I think that's what the Association of Mckenzie Friends has to become, this filter between the victims and their stories and MPs. So to become good caseworkers. In a way, Austin has repeated what John has said. We have to do our homework better. And
because it's time starved.
Everybody is time starved, yes.
Can I ask one quick question of Austin? We now know that the criminal offences were committed in the Iraq War, the Afghan War and the Libya War. And the police have been covering this up for quite some time. It has been dropped, the case has been dropped by the CPS. And we're about to start another process and get a letter, trying to get a letter signed by influential people to get the case reopened on the grounds of new evidence. What is the way of getting a couple of hundred MPs to sign one letter asking to reopen the case against Blair and Straw and Coombe and the rest of them? How would I go about getting it?
The only way you'll get it, and I think you're unlikely to get it, frankly, is by providing with the information that you say has come to light.
Yes.
Of illegal killings or whatever it was in those wars. I'm now trying to get an inquiry into the Hilda Morel killing, which was, what, 20-some years ago. So I've put down earlier the motion stating the facts of the case, and it's got, I think, 70 signatures, but most people say, oh, I don't want to be bothered, it's a long time ago, forget it. And that will be kind of come attitude. People don't like A, to inconvenience themselves, or B, to step out into an open conflict and deprive themselves of the cover of the herd.
But an EDM would be the way to do it.
An EDM, but you have to base it on information sent to MPs, draw up an EDM and get somebody to put it down.
Okay.
And then persuade people to sign it.
Can I just add? One thing I've found is that the more emotionally, syntaxically political the language is that's used, the less likely it is to get through. I don't think you're ever going to get anything. You start pulling Tony Blair or...
The more emotive it is.
Exactly. You start pulling Tony Blair or, you know, the Attorney General at the time, or Jack Straw, a war criminal, you're probably, perfectly correct, but it isn't going to get them, because there's a huge swathe of people in this country, and I know this is a market researcher, who, as soon as you identify a very, very senior member of the establishment, a phrase like that, it just doesn't have any credibility.
Yeah.
You're just an agitator.
I just wanted to hear from Austin, actually, John, the process I could use, and that was very helpful. If you think of anything else, that'd be really great.
Evidence is more powerful than emotion.
Yes.
Very good sentence. Marion, is your question directed to Austin?
Yeah, very briefly, Mitchell. Yeah, on the point of whistleblowing. The Act is there to protect whistleblowers, but is there anything that the House can do collectively to take that to a higher level? Because I'm a whistleblower myself, but where the system turns the whistleblowing against you, that you're either paranoid, delusional, or in need of sectioning. And this is the latest weapon that they do use in South Wales, where if you do become a whistleblower, like for example, if you're a whistleblower in a local authority, you're vexatious. And the minute you get the vexatious come against you, that's it, close shop, nobody wants to talk to you. But if you come from another angle and you become a whistleblower and there's a crime involved and the police sort of come and discuss it with you, the next thing you will find that you will be mentally assessed. And this is a pattern that we see coming with whistleblowers, because obviously being a whistleblower myself and people around me, you start to see patterns. And from the police station, once they've started assessing you, you end up as a secret prisoner locked away in a mental health ward, courtesy of the NHS. And we're noticing this in Wales, and a very good friend of mine came across what it was, a drug circle, and was very big in Wales, to the restaurants here in London, is smokies, the illegal slaughter of lambs where they burn with the delicacy. But he had came across that, but rather than investigate it, it was easier to put this man away on the liquid cosh and diagnose him as with delusions of grandeur.
I mean, this is, we have no way of stopping that, and there's no way of countering that except the strength of the case that's been put by the whistleblower. They'll try any tactic to discredit whistleblowers. They always do. It's usually, this is a disgruntled ex-employee, this is somebody who wasn't going to get promoted, somebody who was facing dismissal anyway. They always try and damage whistleblowers. But I'm not aware, and I don't think the Commons anyway, Parliament anyway, are protecting whistleblowers against that. This is a fight.
It is.
Any weapon is used, particularly by corporate organisations protecting themselves. So I don't see any way around that, except the facts of the matter. They usually speak for themselves.
We must let him go, but thank you all. Marion, why don't you take the seat as a super Mckenzie friend?
No.
Come on, please. You can't leave it empty. Come on, you have been the secretary, you can't leave it empty.
Somebody else in the room, so slide down.
Well, everybody can Lisa come here.
Okay, I'll what?
No,
go
You go. Oh, Jim, you go first. You go first.
No.
That's it, because we can hear each other better.
Yeah. Anybody wants to go a bit closer? Because I am really voicing it.
I wanted to ask him.
You speak up, please.
I wanted to ask him. I'm aware that there is a procedure or there's legislation to protect whistleblowers from companies or organisations. I don't know of anything that would protect a member of the public, people like us who are not working for a local
We are not
authority.
whistleblowers, we are victims trying to become campaigners. A whistleblower is somebody who speaks, who is employed and who basically blows the whistle about his organization, corporation. That's the definition of a whistleblower.
But if you're whistleblowing about an organisation, well, this, you know, I mean, I was a tenant in a housing association. I was whistleblowing. I mean, that's what I was doing. I was, because they were not meeting their legal and contractual obligations, and they used all these tricks, you know, the standard procedure, to get me legal eviction.
The trouble with being a whistleblower is if the other side's going to follow. That's the problem. And if you can find a really influential media outlet, not many of them online, you know, not many at all actually, and or in the old press media, or even on television contractors to take your case up. Although John Hemmings this morning was quite right from his viewpoint as a legislator, saying you need to stick to the procedures and how you do it, because then you'll get better, you know, you'll get better results. The truth of the matter is that nobody gets stuck about Hackgate until Millie Dowler's dead body had been hacked, and then people decided that's beyond the pale, I'm not having it. Which is the only reason it got into the mainstream.
You know that
it was nowhere at all.
The Stafford case, the hospital.
Absolutely.
100 people
Yes.
before it hit the media.
And also, you know, several complete alterations of death certificates and autopsies. The coroner was involved, 3 senior surgeons were involved. Stafford and Staffordshire generally, in terms of social services, hospital care, systemic care, paedophilia, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare as a place. Plymouth is almost as bad. And, you know, it'll be a long time before they break out, because there are too many powerful people involved.
Because in the case I was bringing up, it was a sheltered housing scheme, and the abuses and the negligence and the squalor and the, you know, so that it's very parallel to Stafford Hospital, elderly people, easy access, and you know,
I'll tell you what would
master
be
keys into people, you know, I'm quite sure that it's huge.
Yeah. I tell you what, just thinking as a talk, actually one very good thing would be, most of you would be aware of the journalist Christopher Walker.
Yes.
He's an incredibly persistent and very erudite, and he has a massive following in the media, and people do take him seriously. I think it would be a great idea for Atlee Mckenzie or whoever to have a list all the time so you give to people, like, these are the guys in the white hats in the media. And then, why not as well? These are the guys who used to work for the security services, and everything they write is a smear. You know, because they exist as well.
White list for the mainstream media.
I don't mean that in a sense of a McCarthyite sense of it, because that's an awfully clear thing. I'm talking about people who have a, you know, never mind what they say, a track record of taking cases that seem unwinnable and banging their head against 50 brick walls so they get through. Chris Booker will do that.
Which paper is he with?
The Daily Telegraph.
Sunday.
But I mean, he's been doing it for 50 years. He's one of the founders of Private Eye. You know, he's a great bloke. Yeah, and he's worked with you, Vicky, hasn't he? And he's done a lot of help for Vicky, and he's given me a lot of help in the
Well,
past.
I don't know. He's got me put in prison.
Sorry.
In terms of perhaps approaching influential people in respect of whistleblowers, Ken MacDonald actually asked for that protection in the when he gave evidence to the Leveson inquiry.
Yeah.
Those that watch Newsnight regularly on BBC Two will notice that whenever there are miscarriages of justice, he's brought in by the BBC and he shakes his head and said, "This is absolutely terrible. Something must be done. These things must be stopped." I'm not sure, and in fact, during the hacking investigation, he went to his solicitor's office, saw some correspondence there, and was so shocked by it that he immediately took it to the police and said, "This must be investigated." So one gets the impression, as much as one can do in respect to somebody employed in the judiciary, that that guy might be on side. Is there any, would there be any traction in getting hold of Ken MacDonald? He is a lord after all.
He's exactly the kind of example I'm talking about. You know, sometimes, you know, it's really about as I keep saying this word again because it's very important, don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. And if their track record is one of supporting people and causes when they have nothing to gain, and there's minimal ego but maximum, persistence and passion involved, they're the people to keep on the side of it. Because if you run out of Austins and you run out of John Hemmingses, you've got to go to those people. It is the big tabloid splash in the end that gets it out of the chattering commentariat and into the mainstream, and then politicians get worried because his votes make it.
So could we agree that we approach Ken MacDonald? Let's see whether he's on side.
Yes, we to the subject. I mean, I don't really
I'll
know.
talk to you. I have evidence that he's the opposite, so talk to you
He's a member of the judiciary, so
I'm going to suggest that anybody in this room can approach anybody that they like, that they believe could be helpful to the cause, our collective cause, bringing justice and so on.
Yeah.
Do it and report back to us when we next meet.
But everybody seems to have, even this morning,
Can you speak up, please, Zina?
is this
No, nothing works.
No, as I was saying this morning, every campaigner has their own pet subject on which they dwell. And with MPs, it seems to be the ones that gets them the most attention, as usual. And things like bankruptcy, for instance, nobody wants to know. In fact, I realize that the worst thing that can happen in your life is having your children taken away from you.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And I'd support everybody and fight on everybody's side. I thought, they deserved it. But there are some of us that are not even getting any attention as regards what's going on in the bankruptcy courts. I mean, that is such obvious corruption there. The judges are in on it, the insolvency practitioners are in on it, everybody. We have actually audited how the system is working now. It stretches from the Treasury via the courts to the official receiver, hence the name, the official receiver. Like in the same way, the system is working to take away the children.
I think maybe
it's taking, and if you do anything about it, believe me, you'll be squashed like a tomato.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but you've got to look for what I call close affinity. That's to say, you take something like a bankruptcy case. Somebody is perhaps bankrupt because of the economic situation or because of the
No. I started with the 4 worst bankruptcies known amongst the scene, and we didn't get anywhere.
But what I'm saying is, what you have to do is start somewhere where it will eventually filter down to the area you're in. I would personally be pessimistic and say you are never going to get the general public interested in the subject of bankruptcy any more than you're ever going to get the public interested in the subject of accountancy, because only accountants are interested in that. But if you start from say, why is this judge crooked in this case? Why is the judge above him crooked? A classic example at the moment, okay, SMEs who have been clearly defrauded massively by the Royal Bank of Scotland under Stephen Hester's tutelage. I don't need privilege to say that because it's all done. There's 1,600 cases outstanding, and a friends group that are dealing with it. Right now, that has caused a lot of bankruptcies. The way to get people upset and excited about those bankruptcies is to bring to their attention why they're being forced into bankruptcy in the first place, and how the other people in those lower courts are equally corrupt and know they can get away with being corrupt because the people above them are corrupt and they're never going to blow the whistle on them. Yeah, you just understand what I'm saying?
But the people are not being made bankrupt.
No, I understand that, I know that, but what I mean is they are winding up bankrupt and being cheated in the way they are treated by the elements involved. I think that's probably what you're talking about.
Sorry, but there are many more bankruptcies which have been proceeded by their own lawyer.
Yeah.
Me and my husband, highly solvent state, in forged my other solicitor, forged document to the court to get a bankruptcy. And after 7 years, my MP has raised this matter in the Parliament.
Yeah.
I have managed to close on that firm.
Yeah.
who brought this invalid bankruptcy against me and my husband.
Yeah.
But for the last 4 years, as we are succeeding to annulling our bankruptcy,
Yeah.
the insolvency practitioner who was nominated by the firm of the solicitor is the stepping into his shoe and doing everything he can do to avoid the annulment.
Yeah.
And by fresh evidence, with so much hard working, we have proven that we were not so insolvent. The bankruptcy order should have not been made. Finally, a High Court judge in 2010 agreed with us, and he said the foundation of that firm was established on a fraud. The whole proceeding was abuse of the court proceeding.
Absolutely.
And you imagine, after having such a misjudgment, a High Court judge said the whole proceeding was abuse of the court proceeding.
Yeah.
And he's amazed why 23 other judges have not picked up this.
Okay, but again, but
when this is when I'm succeeding in to annulling this bankruptcy, the bankruptcy manager, chancery manager, they are trying to set me and my husband up with some other allegation.
This is
which was absolutely untrue, and we have to go through hardship for 2 years to strike it out from the court last week.
But ultimately, I'm
No. I haven't finished my sentence.
Sorry.
Now we managed to prove that order was wrong to made against us, but the High Court judge, instead of the case goes in front of the High Court judge, the listing department has transferred this to the deputy judge.
Okay.
And deputy judge QC Ham is a practicing barrister.
But
he's not a specialized in insolvency. He has come there to squash this proceeding.
Yes.
And he said, yes, you've proven that you were not bankrupt. You've proven that this order should be annulled. But who is going to pay the cost of the trustee in bankruptcy?
Yeah.
£400,000 cost.
Yeah.
For the alleged fee of the convicted criminal for 5,000.
Yes.
I didn't pay 5,000 pounds. I went 7 years through this all hardship.
Yeah.
I've proven that what I've said
I
is
understand
right.
what you're saying. It's like John Hemmings was saying this morning. Individual cases in a public meeting are very difficult. I'm saying, and I'm not pubbing you off, I'm trying to say, the way into this is to change the cultural context into which you are bringing this evidence. If the culture at the top is wrong, nobody will pay any attention to it. But the more you change the culture, look, crooks come in all sizes, shapes and colours. That the lawyers, architects, accountants, bankers, if they're there, they're there. And if you come into a context, the police are the classic example. If you go to a constabulary, which is known to have a serious culture of cover-up and obfuscation when people are dealing with them, you won't get anywhere. But if you have a starting point on a bigger issue, got inside that organisation and rooted out people at the top who make the culture, then it's going to, the next time a case like yours comes up, it will get a fairer hearing. Because it is, it's the French say, pour encourage les autres. Once you've hammered somebody at the top, three levels down, they get a bit more scared of doing something naughty.
That was why I raised the subject with John Hemming.
Yeah.
I noticed his answer and the way he evaded the seriousness of it.
Yeah.
And that is who judges the judges.
Yes, exactly.
I'm talking about HM Brotherhood.
I mean, I'm going to say that if there's one industry in the country that needs regulation right now, it's politics. But I'm not suggesting that seriously, but I mean, that you could make a very strong case for it. Because it always comes down to saying, and you, the best way for example, you will never get banks to change the way they view entrepreneurial companies in this country until you stop people like the Treasury hiring people like Stephen Hester. You won't.
Talk about going to the top. We were mentioning this morning, John Henry was saying about there's no point in emailing David Cameron because things won't get to him. But the thing is, David Cameron has apparently been very sympathetic about the way the judiciary make very bizarre decisions. He's confounded by that. We should be capitalising upon that because if the top man, the Prime Minister, is concerned about what the judiciary are up to, there must be some way of getting to him. And we need to get them on board to try and do something about it.
The answer at the moment to be very rich and famous. I mean, Sir Richard Branson is not getting to David Cameron. And that's because you're from there, believe it or not, still. But that's the problem. Yeah, so much of power is about visibility. Visibility is very, very important to politicians. Their own visibility and the visibility of other people who can stuff them.
He has been highly critical of judges, and surely we need to get him to, take action on that.
I do accept the statement.
Can I
it's a slippery
thing on this, Dawn? I just wanted one way in which we can get at these people. It's very important that we use our power. In 2001, a criminal offence of paying tax, when it came into force in England and Wales. Now, very few people know this, but it is a criminal offence to pay tax to a government which wages war or which commits acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. So for the first time in history, we have the law on our side, and we have a legal duty to refuse to pay tax. Now, this, to my mind, is a totally different way of ensuring that the government, the courts, the police, and everybody else starts to take account of us. Because if we can get a proper national tax diversion strategy operating lawful, we can force them, through the lack of money, to start to listen. So I would really recommend, if other people are interested in investigating how to get this up and running, it's something that could be extremely powerful for us.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but what they did to me was make me bankrupt, took my house and sold it and took over £200,000. So I'm afraid there's a lot of
intimidation
Who did that to you? The NRA? Why did they do that?
Why? Because they alleged that I owed them taxes, which I didn't.
And you can prove that they didn't.
Oh yes, I can prove
We
it.
have more victims of the
Because what they do is they send you the assessments, and when you start challenging them,
No, I've been made bankrupt by the Inland Revenue because I've been on tax strike since 1998. I discovered in 2003 that it is a criminal offence to pay tax, but I can't get anybody else to back that up. So what is it looking for?
The definition you're talking about, the problem is that you are alleging that the country's in a state of war, therefore it's illegal to pay the
No, I'm saying that it's 4 issues: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes.
Yeah.
And at the same time as that was brought in, there were 3 other crimes: conduct ancillary to genocide, conduct ancillary to crimes against humanity, and conduct ancillary to war crimes. And that, the legislation says, including providing the means for the commission of the crime. Now that is written into the law of England and Wales, and the police, it is their duty to uphold and enforce the law of England and Wales. So what we need to do is to ensure that the police prosecute people under the International Criminal Court Act. Now we've not had any luck at all in 8 years, and there have been no prosecutions under this, which is the most important criminal offence in English law. So if we can get this happening and get other people on board with it, I think we have one of the most powerful tools available to us. It's not a matter of whether a war is lawful or not. I can prove that it isn't. But if you kill a person because of their nationality, ethnicity, race or religion as part of a state policy, that is a crime of genocide. And that has been happening in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and now in Syria. And we can prove that in court. They have done everything possible to ensure that these issues stay out of the media, stay out of court. Because everybody's known for years that our government, by firing cruise missiles into Kabul, killing people in marketplaces and everything else, is committing the worst crimes known to mankind. But nobody's doing anything about it. We have to force action to uphold and enforce the law of England and Wales as passed, as introduced by Tony Blair's government in September 2001. That would be extremely powerful, and I want this really to back up the actions, because if we're not having any action through Parliament, and we've had so little action through Parliament, we've got to somehow find a different route, a different approach to force our government to do something.
Can I leave just one route which no one here has mentioned ever since I've been coming here? I've been coming here for 20 years to this building for these sort of meetings. It's my experiences in the Channel Islands, which is not part of the United Kingdom. We've got members of Parliament who are anxious to help. We know at least 7, don't we now? 7, and in fact, Sabine will know 27. The Privy Council. I won't raise it again unless people want to come to me and ask me about it. But Her Majesty's government, the courts, the police, the lawyers under Royal Charter, the psychiatrists who are being used in all these children's cases are under the final control of Her Majesty in Council, the Privy Council. I have used it like a yo-yo from Guernsey. I have represented myself in Downing Street at the Privy Council hearings more than anybody in Channel Island history. And on one example, the authorities decided that I was too political and I was to be kicked out of the tax haven. My partner was mentally ill, so they put him in a mental home, and I was sent to prison for contempt of court because I arrested the magistrate, and I got 13 months. But I took my Clamada Harrow. This is where you go on your knees when it's a prohibitive injunction. And the last court in the Channel Islands, and it used to be Australia and some of the West Indies, they're all changed now, is their last port of call for justice in criminal and civil proceedings. I'm trying to get the MPs, and I've been doing this for 20 years, that Her Majesty's prerogative is the ultimate tool that is now vulnerable due to internet and educated people. People are becoming more educated because of the internet, Sabine, Fritz and Unite, and these things. Because each doctor, I've just been again to the GM, and because they've had the nod from the judges that the doctor was given permission to be, his conduct was obscene, Dr. Tegwin Williams, of the psychiatrist for the South Wales Police, in fact Wales, is getting huge protection for saying that I have a brain tumour and that I have significant irreversible brain damage, therefore I must be sent to Ashworth. Now that was giving the police a favour for another situation where he was in trouble and the police said, you do that, we'll do that. But they're all responsible to Her Majesty's Government's Privy Council. Who is the Privy Council? Some of you may not know. The majority are members of Parliament. And I wanted to introduce that seed with John Hemmings, because John Hemmings is a good man. That man is going to get us further than people I've met the last 20 years. And we've got 1 or 2, like Austin, and a few others, who are ready to go. I've not listened to those 2 before support us so much in what they've said about the courts are wicked, the judges are wicked, but they are vulnerable. We should be thinking, I'll leave it with you, we should be thinking about us putting something towards the Privy Council. I used to go there representing myself. I used to listen to all the other cases, all over the Commonwealth. And Lord, what's his name, Cashstone, who was then the boss, he said, I'm very impressed with your presentation for a Clamada Harrow, but we will advise Her Majesty not to intervene. I think that the Privy Council can intervene into the conduct of doctors, the conduct of the GMC, the conduct of the veterinary profession, of lawyers, and they can intervene, and they are members of Parliament. I cannot get these speakers at all these meetings the last 20 years that link, because they're frightened. I saw his eyes when I said it. Did anybody else notice Hemmings' demeanour? No, not Austin. No.
John Hemmings.
Yeah, but you see, I think what a lot of people are raising here, and as they just mentioned it to me as well, and I think the same thing goes to Chris. I mean, we're all talking about different aspects of basically we have a fairly dysfunctional constitution. too many doubts in it. There aren't enough checks and balances, which is the point you're making. The reason why, at the end of the day, no matter what we might think of the culture and the society there in general, the reason why the Americans catch far more crooks in these areas than we do is because there are more ways to do it, because there are more checks and balances. You're much more likely to reach a cul-de-sac in this country's constitution than in the United States. That's my experience.
Actually, the one thing that they
Lisa, can I just, Lisa has had her point hand up for a while and Mary as well. Let's just go by the rules.
I just want to say 5 words. They have anti-racketeering laws, we don't.
Yeah. Well, they have antitrust laws too. But here we go.
I just want to come in here for a second. Just to raise attention to what's been said so far. We're discussing so many diverse issues here. Has anybody behind this wall got a clue of what we are, apart from the tool that we've met today? I'm just sort of stopping here, just so that we can move forward, because as we're going to go around the tables here, we're going to go into other diverse subjects. Just so that the people here outside this wall know that what we are discussing. At this point, can we sort of think about, when we've gone away from here, that some sort of a report gone together, be put together, like all the different topics that we're discussing here, because we're not just, you know, what sort of way they perceive us, I don't know, but each time I come to these meetings, and I wish I could come to more of them, there are really, really valuable points coming out of these rooms. I know it's being videoed, but I just want to...
Do you mean substituted minutes?
Well, if we can use the video as a sort of a minutes, where we can put a report together, even if it goes to the select committee that Austin Mitchell said. In his absence, we went on to discuss all these varying points. Because when you think about all the different areas that people sort of work at Mckenzie Friends or researching with, you know, diverse things that we've even discussed here this afternoon. I just feel it should be recorded in some way.
It will be, that's why I was making the point about the Constitution, and I think this is why Linda is also making points about, you know, top level, I don't mean top level people, I mean top level parts of how the country actually functions. This is again talking about, you know, checks and balances, you're talking about having no anti-racketeering rules, you know. There are many reasons why we don't have a constitution that's written in this country, but I think we've run out of years. Yes.
We've got the Magna Carta, and you know, that's being revived.
Well, she may have died in vain after being, anyway. In all seriousness, I really think that that what you're talking about is turning into the same thing, and I think you've been dying to say something about this.
I think the 2 points I was making was this. The 2 points I was making was one about the loss of the House of Lords as a fully independent house. Yes. And that although it is deemed that having elected officials is preferable, the system, the people who were in the Lords, there were some bad Lords, there were some wastrel Lords, there were some Lords who, in the Marie Antoinette's sense, but the majority grow up with a great sense of respect of duty, and also for people within their care, also because of the privileged background they come from, they have a chance of a very well-rounded education. And because a lot of them were not having to do full-time jobs, they could therefore put an awful lot of time into looking at the legislature, to checking it was right, to keep sending it back to the House of Commons. Similarly with the High Court, they had more ability to go through laws that were bad laws. And now with the different balance, the balance within the laws is a lot more political than it was previously, which leads to more bias and more pressure being put on the government or the opposition, and voting down party lines rather than with good laws. And similarly, because a lot of the new peers coming in have full-time jobs and full-time careers. They don't attend the house as often as they need to. And I think that this is one area where a very good balance, not perfect because none is, has been pushed away under political expediency. I think the other point that I wish to make was on war. And although many genocides and crimes are committed, the war being started in the first place and killing people, is that, how do we deal with that? Do we say that it's such a complicated issue? People start killing other people, what do we do? Do we defend them? In defending them, innocent people are unfortunate.
It was a very straightforward issue. It was illegal.
Yes, things happen.
Because it's illegal, that doesn't stop people committing crimes. It's illegal to steal.
It's very profitable, though.
It is very
It's one of the most profitable industries there is.
Yeah. But just because it's illegal doesn't mean that people don't do it.
It's business as usual, isn't it? They just make
but it's not all
we think with more
money.
than they ever did.
It isn't necessarily all to do with money. I mean, ethnic cleansing is not necessarily to do with making money. The start of the two Great Wars was probably not.
Well, it is. It's control of
Can I add one point about this? It is important. The real issue comes back to changing the system. Our system in this country enables one man to take us to war. Tony Blair was rung up by George Bush back in October 2001, and George Bush asked Britain to back him. Tony Blair decided to go to war, and we've been with that decision ever since. It was illegal at the time. The system should not allow any one person to enable us to take us to war. We have to change our way of doing things, and a way of doing that is through a new act, and change the way in which we use armed force.
Unfortunately, Chris, to take your point there, with absolutely no offence made at all, the problem in that case was that in exactly the same way as the purchase by the Saudis of BAE aircraft, Tony Blair subverted completely the rule of law, policing and justice in this country on both occasions. In the first case, with the active cooperation of Jack Straw. And the point this lady's making is right on the money. If you don't change the culture in which this sort of thing is tolerated, you can pass as many laws as you like. Don't just ignore them.
That's what I'm saying. We've got to change the system.
The system is one thing. One system is only as good as the ethics of the people who are in it and running it. And what we've done, I would contend that what we've done in the last 40, 50 years in this country is allow ethics to be for wimps. But the real achievers, who needs ethics?
I think one of the things I would interject here is
just sorry to stop you, Lisa. We've got 12 minutes left.
Okay, so
there have just been a few hands up. I think we can't. We won't be able to hold that at all.
1 second on this. I think the thing is, where the ethics need concentrating on is persuading people not to want to fight and upset peace in the first place, rather than treating war as a criminal act once it's happened.
I just wonder whether we shouldn't give people a chance to say what kind of solutions they propose and how to go forward, rather than anything more in terms of
One important solution.
problem and discussion. But you were not the first to show your hand.
No, practicing solicitor and barrister should not sit as a judge in the court where they are practicing as a barrister and solicitor.
Okay.
So they should not sit as a judge.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There are a lot of individuals and organizations which is disturbed, and a lot of people. There are a lot of different energy sources. I just would like to give some of the names in case if you don't know their name. There are a lot of information on the internet. They published a lot of videos and all these damn issues and Freemasonry, all these kind of things. One of them is Brian Meloni. Have you heard about it? Brian Meloni?
Yeah.
One of them is Brian Meloni. You can get a lot of information. And British Constitution Group, have you heard about it?
Brian Garrett.
Yeah, Brian Garish.
I would be personally very
Bill
careful.
And David Icke, actually, David Icke. And this, there are a lot of information they publish on the internet. I wish, they could be here and maybe in a different platform, and everybody can document it
Can I
in a
just
wider
say,
scale.
I think each individual has to make their own mind up about the people you're talking about. I mean, I wouldn't personally upset the name industry. I wouldn't concur with you on that view. I think it's, you said you wanted solutions.
I also wanted to give, actually, you then 1, 2, 3, and if you then want to be last and close things, John, I'm not happy about it, but Belinda, you should actually close after John then maybe. That's all right, then that covers 10 minutes. I'm sorry, I missed you, that's true. Oh, now you come along, Terry. Okay, so.
I've been researching ethics of lawyers for about 10 years now. I've been researching ethics of lawyers for about 10 years now.
30 years to go.
I have no need of them.
Bank account.
Every 400 years or so, lawyers seem to get bad press. Edward I made a law against lawyers not to deceive the court or beguile the parties, and he dismissed all of his judges but 2 for corruption in 1289. In 1628, we had the Petition of Right, where lawyers were forbearing to proceed against wrongdoers. In 1641, we had the 6 money judges giving opinions that inland counties could raise taxes, whereas that's what was in Parliament. We're about ripe for another clear out, I would say. I came across a good law helping families in bankruptcy. That's Section 336 and 337 of the Insolvency Act. Section 337 says that a bankrupt with a child under 18 can stay until the child's under 18, has occupation rights. And Section 336, a spouse has occupation rights indefinitely, regardless of age of children. I raised that point of law in the High Court. It was regarded as an exocet point, but ultimately he doubted that the law could ever be meant to deprive creditors of their money. Went to Court of Appeal, unsuccessful. Trying to get to the Supreme Court, and there's some problems with access to that court, so we're taking that thing to Europe. But on that point of law alone, on Section 336 point, there's been about 810,000 bankruptcies since October 1985, about 98 billion in property value, I would say. About 50% of which should have had their sales delayed because of children being there, and about another 50% whose spouses should still be living there now. These judges are not obeying the law. They decide things according to their own manner of protecting property, because they're property owners themselves. And conduct of lawyers, it's the kind of thing that goes in the High Court, but there's no particular rule that says that district judges can discipline solicitors and barristers that appear in front of them. The law is very, very weak there. But I picked up on the point of saying about ethics.
Right.
Thank you. Roger.
Just one thing about what can we do. Probably a few people have read in The Independent about Andreas Whittam-Smith trying to put together local independent groups which would gather attention and support, and in 2015 he hopes that in some respect there will be sufficient clout going forward to hopefully try and change the type of people that represent us. I'm going to give you a very, very good example, and I met him the other day, and John may well know him, and that is George Ferguson down in Bristol. He has been voted the independent mayor down there. Now, nobody in the world thought that an independent mayor would get voted in Bristol. A gent called Charles Secret, who I think helped form Friends of the Earth, has brought together groups of people, and I was lucky enough to go to their first meeting down in Bristol about 3 to 4 weeks ago. He's having another one down there on February the 2nd. These are not just environmentalists, they are concerned with the way that the whole thing operates. And one of the most revealing, I'll keep this short, talks at this meeting was by the woman who ran George Ferguson's operation to get elected as mayor. She had had no contact with politics at all for 3 months before the vote took place. She started stuffing envelopes, and then she finally wound up as the head of his team, his support group, and they found that When they canvassed people in Bristol, they were welcomed with open arms because people had not been called upon by politicians. Lots of politicians down there thought it's a done deal. They're going to vote for us, so we don't need to go around there. He got in with a vote of 6,000 majority. Now, you can look at the whole problem and think, well, we're never going to overcome it. But if he can do that in 3 months, there is hope. So could I possibly ask people to look out for or go onto the independent website, or there's going to be a website brought up very soon, and it's an organisation called ACT, A-C-T, exclamation mark. Now, what they intend to do is to coalesce with other groups who have similar objectives, and hopefully by the time 2015 rolls around, there will be hopefully something of a sea change. If 6,000 people can overturn a majority of the Labour group in Bristol, which is a lot of theirs working class, as John will probably know, then there's hope for us all. So what we need to do is to be independent. John?
And he accepts his whole salary in Bristol pounds. Right?
In Bristol pounds, yes.
That's really the dot on the I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle, you want to
Yeah, I just want to get your pens out because I want you to write this down. There's a very good video that gives you a very good insight into the banks, the corporations, and the news media and how the whole thing is all set up. It's called The Calling. It's Time to Wake Up. It's on YouTube. It's about an hour long and it's a real eye-opener. It's excellent. Psychiatry. There is no medical or scientific evidence to substantiate psychiatry. And they are prescribing very powerful drugs to a lot of people. If you want to see some really, really brilliant, well-researched documentaries about psychiatry, if you go on to Citizens Commission on Human Rights, there's one called DSM-5, Diagnostic Statistic Manual 5. They call it the billing Bible. They just come up with disorders and then they bill against it. That's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's excellent. There's a range of them, but the latest one, Age of Fear. The first one, Psychiatry, Industry of Death. It's just there to make money, and they're a real eye-opener. The other thing, again, just to repeat about money, banks, all the banks are private, they create money, it's created on your signature, you go for a loan, you sign it, that creates the money. We can all be our own bankers, and it's completely legal under the 1882 Bills of Exchange Act. Now, if I send a copy of that to Sabine, just the Act, or to Chris, that can be sent out. And there are actually certificates that you can print up online. Just fill it in, and it is a completely legal document, and it needs, so don't worry about not having any money or how you're going to pay your court costs or anything like that, because you can do it with a bill of exchange or promissory note. And as I said, people are doing this, it's working, they have to accept it, it's being tried and tested. I'll try and get you, a link.
Very promising indeed.
So that's
Can you tell us where is this working? In this country? Abroad?
Yes, I don't know if you want to inundate Chris. I'll try and find out. I should have had it downloaded onto, because each week he sends out the notes and then he sends you, it's just like little checks. And as soon as if you give it to them, you can pay your gas bills, your electric bills, they have to accept it because it is legal currency. So don't worry about not having enough money. I mean, you can't go to the shops, but you can write a note and it will be accepted because they just trade it out. When you get a bill, right, your gas bill and electric bill, it's got a counterfoil, right? If you send a cheque and you sign that counterfoil becomes a credit, and they exchange it, so you pay twice. They exchange that because it's got your signature on it. That's how it's done. So don't worry, that's all the banks do. We're all our own bankers. We can just create the money the same way. They created the system, or let's just,
So that they can't
Do it
make
ourselves.
bankrupt and then take it out of that, that's how the bankruptcy works.
I don't
We
think I'm
have
not going to ask,
December
but
with this.
but that is how it's done. That's how money is created, so we can all be our own back.
We want then Terry and then you and then you. Okay?
Sorry, I know proper English. Why this social service department, big power? Every department this control. Housing department, benefit department, and GP department. Every department this control social service. Again, this decision again coming my baby. Why? My baby no safe. I give MP letter, I give media letter. Everybody know my help. Why? My baby is liar? No, my baby is liar. Social service department is liar. Social service department, no big power. My God, big power.
Thank you.
Sorry, just quickly on that. Yeah, that's one big point in this country actually, because of the power that social workers have got. Because you're aware of the Emma case. I think that sums it up there, where they had the power to block the airports and everything, all based on false facts.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly true.
Just to support you on that, you know.
My baby will talk again. This position, my baby. This year again.